Sure. So, Larry Jones II, I am the Commissioner of IT for the City of Cleveland. Not only is the general fund part of my responsibility, but also a lot of the public safety projects. So, for police, fire, EMS. Today, I'm here to present about Fusus. So, give you a background of what Fusus is, essentially how we got started, what do we use Fusus for, and then answer any questions, concerns you may have about Fusus. Um, and I believe I'm sharing my screen. So, what is Fusus? Can you see? Okay. So, what is Fusus? Fusus is a cloud-based real-time operations platform that integrates public safety systems and data to enhance situational awareness. So, the best way to think of Fusus is previous to Fusus, and the sergeant will talk about this with the Real Time Crime Center. One of the things that we ran into when we first set up the Real Time Crime Center is we have a 911 computer aided dispatch system. So they would have to log into CAD to see the CAD calls. We also have a robust video surveillance network. There's a separate system that you can view video surveillance cameras through Milestone. They would have to individually log into Milestone, pull up cameras. Um, we have automated vehicle location system, AVL, which tells you where police, fire, EMS vehicles are as it relates to incidents. That is another system that they would separately have to log into. ShotSpotter as well. All these systems were separate logins. Fusus takes essentially the investments we've made in all these separate systems, puts it in one pane of glass. So whether it's the research analyst that's in the real-time crime center, whether it's someone in dispatch, whether we activated our emergency operations center, or someone on the command bus. This system allows them to see all these platforms in one pane of glass so they can have enhanced situational awareness, provide additional information to officers who are responding, or provide additional information as it relates to the incident that is going on or the special event. So that was the initial rollout for Fusus and why we went forward with Fusus. Um, One of the questions was, what is the annual spend with Fusus? So when we first started Fusus as a pilot, and I'll go through what that looked like, it was approximately $62,000 to stand Fusus up. Fusus is based on the number of accounts. So currently we have an enterprise system. So that means Fusus doesn't care if I have one officer logged in or say I have 250 folks logged in, or 2,000 folks logged into the system. It also takes into account for what you're integrating in. So if you're only integrating video surveillance, it may be cheaper, but because, like I mentioned, we're integrating multiple platforms into this, we have an enterprise license, which allows us to share throughout the division of police. And we're also looking to expand it through other departments that are non-public safety. And I'll get into what that looks like. So how we got started with Fusus was the NFL draft. So in 2021, the NFL, Cleveland hosted the NFL draft. The NFL came to us and said, "Hey, we're putting up two drones, we're putting up 62 cameras around the area, and we're willing to share those video feeds and those drones with you for situational awareness of what's going on with the event." I had 3 weeks to figure out what is a platform that would allow us to take in this data instead of essentially logging into 4 or 5 different systems separately. One of my contacts from another city was actually using Fusus with some of the work they were doing in Minneapolis. So when they referred to me and said, "Hey, take a look at this vendor. They're doing great things for us." We reached out to them, and in 3 weeks, they were able to incorporate it. We included 75 of our local cameras that were around where the NFL event was going to be. We were able to bring in the NFL cameras. We brought in our CAD system, and we also were able to bring in partners. So RTA had cameras that were valuable to the event. We also then went out to some of the community neighborhoods who said, "Hey, we've got um, cameras from apartment complexes, steel yard, different things that in the past we were trying to figure out a platform to share when entities said, 'Hey, we've got public right-of-way cameras. We would be happy to share with you.'" Through this process, that was one of the things we wanted to test. Like, it's great to say we've got select partners who we know share our same technology. That's easy to integrate. But let's go to some of those essentially mom and pop stores, vendors who have equipment that typically we couldn't integrate with. And working with them via Fusus, we brought in those cameras. So very successful with the NFL draft, and that led to us expanding and saying, "Okay, this was our proof of concept. It works. We were blown away by the capabilities. Let's get this integrated and start moving forward and bringing this into our operations. So again, how Fusus is used. So as I mentioned before, it streamlines the emergency and incident management into a single platform. And what I actually are showing on the screen is these are pictures of cameras I took earlier today. So essentially, as you know, there's a sinkhole. And if you look in, you can kind of see where the sinkhole is at. And there was a backhoe working in it earlier today. So this is the true capability of the platform. So all of a sudden, it's bringing that situational awareness into one platform that allows, whether it's the officers, and what I'm working on through the expansion of this is, yes, this is a public safety tool, but as you can see, this information would be vital to Cleveland Water. So for their dispatch center. So it makes sense that their dispatch center has access to see the cameras. We went through the same thing with Public Works as it relates for snow removal. It's one thing for a snow operator to go over the radio and say, hey, East Ninth and St. Clair is clean. It's another thing for the snow operations to look at the cameras real time and determine, hey, you know what, we just got hit with another wave. We need crews back over there. So that's one of the important things that this platform allows us to do in real time. The other thing is even integrating into our CAD system. So as you can see, with this limited information, there was a vehicle that was facing the wrong way on the freeway this morning. Again, this is real-time information that whether EMS is responding, whether fire is responding, those dispatchers can quickly see what's going on and make sure the appropriate resources are there. It also allows us to know what resources we need to send, and we get that additional information so that that call for service is treated correctly and we're responding with the appropriate resources to address that situation. I know one of the big things that came up is, again, audit trail. So how do we audit this system? How do we know the correct folks are using the system? So one of the things I was able to bring up is every time you log into the system. So essentially, I pulled my logins. So it tells me what time I logged into the system. It'll tell the IP address I'm using. It also tells what I did. So as you can see, it actually lists that I was looking at a camera this morning. So all that detailed information is there. And as the auditor, you can even put notes in it. So as I put an example, adding a note, reviewing this is an example for the CPC to see real time. So those are notes that I can put into the system. Any administrator who has access as an administrator, when they're doing an audit, they can add notes. And this is not just unique to this system, but another example, which I don't want to go too deep into, is the same thing. So again, if I log into evidence.com and I look at a body worn camera, I actually put a note in there that, hey, this was a review, so that if the commander or somebody else reviews and says, hey, why was Larry accessing this camera, they see the note of, why I logged in, what I did. So again, this is something that's built into the system that every action that's done is logged. And lastly, before more so want to focus on any questions, I wanted just to go over how do we safeguard this? So how are permissions put in place? So essentially, if I get a request from the sergeant from the real-time crime center that says, hey, I've got a new detective who's joining the unit, excuse me, everybody's put into permission groups. So that means they don't have blanket access. So essentially, if you tell me this is a patrol officer and they shouldn't be running license plates, as you can see via this list, it says deny LRP, excuse me, LPR. So that means that person would not be allowed to access anything associated with license plate readers. Again, one of the things it says is deny City Hall. That means that person wouldn't be able to see anything associated with City Hall. So this is what we did. So this group is actually our Cleveland Fire dispatchers group, where it says the permissions, and everything you see denied means they don't have the ability to access or see. So that's one of the safeguards that we put in place. And we set up those groups throughout the system to ensure that when you're logging in, we know exactly what you can and can't see, what access you have, and to that point, That allows us to make sure, we put the appropriate safeguards on those accounts that are being created.
Impressed that you got everything set up in 3 weeks for the draft. I imagine that was a heavy lift. A couple questions I have is, so you talked a lot about kind of how you, like, how Fusus is used, kind of like in an active way where you're going in and being like, I want to look at this place, this thing. Can you tell me about any alerts that it sends? If, are there alerts that it will send out? Like, does it alert people that, hey, something is being picked up in this particular area? And then also, can you tell me about if there are any AI integration, whether that's something that's happening through Fusus or if other programs that are being integrated or Fusus, how AI is.
Okay, sure. So, I'm going to take your questions in reverse. So, AI, we actually have a AI governance committee as it relates to anything we're doing related to AI, and we're in basically I will say, crawl, walk, run phase of AI. So right now, we're really focused on the governance because we want to make sure that folks who come to us with use cases, those things are vetted first before anything's introduced. What I will caution you with is a lot of vendors in the public safety space will say they're using AI. They're really using analytics. So Fusus is one of those things where you'll see on the website AI enhancements. Actually, what they're using is analytics. So some of the recorders, we have analytics turned on, similar to what we did with our video surveillance cameras. So, and this stuff has been around for centuries. Essentially, you can draw a box around the exit door, and the camera can alert you anytime an object comes through that door. They're calling that AI. That's not the true definition of what AI is as it relates to machine learning or anything. These are analytics that have been built into cameras for years. So essentially, as part of this platform, Fusus says, oh, we have AI enhanced recorders, but they allow you to track an object. So we can say, all right, this is, for instance, the parade is coming up. We can draw a box around the area and say anybody who goes the wrong way down this street related to the parade, send us an alert or make a notification in the system. Those things have existed 10, 15 years before. Folks are now calling that AI. It's trending, it's edge, but it's not true what I would call machine learning, or you built this model and now you're telling the system to come back and produce a report or spit something back out to you. And I'm sorry, what was your first question? Yeah, so I would probably relate to the commander and the sergeant on that. They have different operations as they relate to some of the systems on how they want to receive alerts or how they act on those alerts. From my perspective, we're more from the administrative. We set the system up to make sure it functions how they want it. But as it relates to kind of the day-to-day operations of what notifies police, they would be better to tell you, hey, when this goes off in the real-time crime center, these are the things that they look at.
Those features existed before, but now they're saying that it's enhanced by AI. Are there other, other than just regular recording, are there any other ways that AI is being used as part of this system?
Sure. So I'll give you a perfect example as it relates to our camera monitoring. So we actually have a machine learning software, it's true AI based, that monitors the cameras from a standpoint of is this camera up or down. So previous to the software, I hired three individuals who man our, I will call a video surveillance team. Their job was to check over 3,000 cameras every single day to say if they're up or down. This machine learning tool that we put in place actually now does its check. So what the machine had to do is learn what was a good picture. So it learned what the camera should look like at night, the middle of the day, evening, and when it does its check, it compares those images against that. So if it says, hey, camera looks good, it's going to come back and say this camera's up when I checked it, no issues. One of the things I will tell you about machine learning is it had never seen snow. So the first time it snowed, we got an error report saying that, it's like 2,000 cameras down. We had to go in and teach the software that, hey, this is snow, this is an acceptable image. Once it realized that, okay, this snow is acceptable, it self-corrected itself. So that's one of those things where, again, it's a great tool, it's a great use of machine learning, but AI is not foolproof, to the what they advertise it to be. It's not there yet for those simple things that come up, even lighting changes, different daylight savings. It was like, hey, at 6 o'clock, it used to be dark. I mean, it used to be light, now it's dark. Is something wrong with this image? It's darker today. It's going to flag that. So it's things like that where you realize that it's a powerful tool as it relates to making the work of checking cameras more efficient, but it still has to have that human interaction into it. Oh, we have a governance committee. Yes, correct. Yeah, we're making a governance committee for the entire city. Yes.
For the public, 'cause I think I missed it. Can you just go through the different types of technologies that's gonna be kind of incorporated?
Okay, sure. So today in Fusus, we have our automated vehicle location system. So that's AVL. We have our body worn cameras. We have our video surveillance cameras. And then we have basically our public-private partnership. So we have public entities and private entities who have shared their camera feeds with us, and all those come into Fusus. Um, ShotSpotter, our CAD system, and license plate readers. I think those are the current systems that we currently integrate into the platform.
When it was powered, and can you talk a little bit about how it was piloted and what role, like, what, I guess I'm trying to get to how that was actually done, like the nuts and bolts, like what did the department actually do? Um, like, I want a little bit more information about the how the police did this because I want to make sure. I'll just stop there for now.
Sure. So I would say what the IT role is. So the division comes to us and says, hey, we got an idea or we have a question or this is a problem we need IT's assistance with solving. From that instance, I take that on as my task to vet the solution, figure out what does, what won't work as it relates to the IT infrastructure that's already in place, and then I come back and present, whether it's to the commander, the deputy chief, the chief. These are the possible solutions. This is the solution we're recommending. And then from there, it's either demos, pilots for the division to say, okay, we've seen the demos, we've talked to other users who are using this. We believe that this test case will work for us. What are the next steps for us to get this implemented? Um, so when you said how did Fusus come about or how did it come about as it relates to the NFL draft, it was one of those things where the NFL, and again, there were basically two command centers set up. The NFL was going to do their own thing, we were going to do our own thing, and then there was coordination in between both. So our task was the NFL is going to provide these cameras, this infrastructure. How do we find a way to accept it so that they don't have a separate system that we have issues accessing, and then we have cameras that they were interested in accessing? How do we marry the two together?
during this NFL draft?
Yes, yes. When you say data,
I think as an oversight body, I don't think this is approved by the commission yet. Approved system to use in Cleveland, so I guess I'm just trying to get at if we can see how it was used during the NFL draft, because it's not a policy that is approved for use. We've approved license plate readers, we've approved shot detection system, shot spotter, we've approved body worn cameras, but we haven't approved useless. So I guess my concern is it being deployed in the city without an approved policy. So I think we would like to see oh, we want in place then. All right, so you can never mind on that then. And I think that's all I have. I just wanted to make sure that I got the dates wrong, but I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't being deployed. That was like my, thank you.
There is a divisional notice that they sent out a while ago, but we have not received nor passed the GPO, form of GPO, so it's being used under the divisional notice. There is a question online, and actually there's one question that we're gonna have to figure out, because I was just looking online for the ALPR, because we did pass that, I don't remember the date, but online it's still the October 2023 version of the ALPR, so we'll have to, Commander, when you come up, maybe we can, if you know what's happening with the ALPR GPO. I remember the date. Do you remember when we did that? Was it last year? Yeah, ALPR.
That's last year.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll have to look into that. But if you have an answer to that, that'd be great. We do have a question online. If you could, I mean, I can unmute, or he can unmute himself, but Brian Ray is online. Yeah, there you go.
Hey, everybody. I'm actually in the parking lot. I apologize. Come from another meeting and didn't make it in, but I caught the from about 6:12 on. Really appreciate the presentation. Brian Ram, I'm one of the co-interim deans at Cleveland State. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. One of the co-interim deans at Cleveland State and longstanding director of the Cybersecurity and Data Privacy Center. Done a lot of work with communities who have surveillance ordinances and with the Cleveland Policing Commission, including helping to advise on the drones and the ALPR policy. I mean, just big picture, one of the things that's, from my perspective, and best practices around these kinds of systems is making sure that there's a really robust, not only data access policy and recording of who's accessing, and titrated use in terms of who gets access for what, but that there's actual rationale for why, and some policies around, okay, you can use it for this, but this is the predicate that you've got to have to use it for this, right? And of course, it's different when you're using for civilian use and when you're using it for law enforcement. But of course, the only reason to use a system like this is eventually, for security's sake. And so we just have to be attentive to the fact that you want to really have a prospective set of policies in place that say, okay, here are the accepted reasons why you could use this. And with Fusus, of course, the problem is it's an incredibly robust camera system and linked set of camera systems that then you layer on, as Shalana was explaining, all sorts of capabilities, either retroactively on the footage or proactively live on what's happening. And so you've got to then have a nested set of requirements and policies around, okay, when are we allowed and why are we allowed to layer on object recognition? When and why are we allowed to layer on facial recognition? Are we doing it retroactively? Are we doing it live? When and why are we allowed to use ALPRs? And then for each of those different facets, you've got to have retention policies and other things. And then on top of all that, and I know I sound like a little bit like a crank, but these are key things. If you put them in place prospectively, you can do it. There needs to be transparency and public reporting, which is required in our ALPR policy. And I'm not sure if we've seen a public report yet on, okay, now let's report out last year or last quarter or last 6 months. These are all of the times that this piece of the system was accessed, by whom and why. Because without that, then, you know, although the record's there, until someone goes to look for it or knows to go to look for it, then we don't really know. And without that kind of proactive publishing of those comprehensive records, then there's really not an opportunity for everybody to understand, okay, is this working? And then finally, on top of that, what you'd really want is an analysis of what are we paying for this, and what are we getting out of it, right? What are we actually doing with these technologies? What's the end result? And that's it's quite a bit harder to map, but ultimately you want that. But at a minimum, I think you want these transparency guardrails. And I know we've done it with ALPRs. I know we've done it with drones. I don't know that we've actually seen the results in terms of having the transparency around it. But with the Fusus system, it's critical that we start to then build that same kind of, it's really procedural guardrails into when it's being used, and then break it down into all those facets. So that's, for what it's worth, my perspective.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can you hear me, Ryan? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear you. I couldn't hear some of the other stuff, but
Yeah, that's a very helpful comment. And that went to one of my questions around, you're talking about object recognition, coming through a door, or what have you, or going down the street. But my questions were around facial recognition and more, you know, the tracking, like, so Fusus brings in ALPR, so you could track a car across the city, basically, based on the license plate readers you have. Is that correct, or is that more of a question for the division?
The Division Police does not use facial recognition.
So we'll ask you some, we'll get that recorded, so that's great. I think, I know you've said that, I just want to get it on record, so, okay. Are there any questions from the community? Do we have a mic? Can we get the mic? And, hopefully that will be here, and maybe stand close there so that, the recording will pick you up.
Thank you for your presentation. My name is Amanda Hanna, and I was struck, having worked with city departments before, that this was stood up as quickly as it was, but also then was there an RFP process after the fact to look for other vendors, or was the pilot just rolled into then procuring the technology? That's my first question. I have a few, if that's okay.
Sure. So this purchase was actually on a cooperative purchasing agreement. So essentially, when we do cooperative purchases, other cities have already completed the RFP process, and we're allowed to use or utilize their contracts, their RFP process to purchase equipment. So essentially, there's national purchasing consortiums throughout this country that we can utilize to purchase equipment, resources, and technology.
I'm sure it was a legitimate one, that it wasn't maybe compared to other,
So
you know, like what was the comparison and who owns Fusus? I guess are two
Yep.
questions.
So one, we actually did have two systems that do the similar thing. So Motorola has a platform called Command Central Aware. We actually purchased Command Central Aware, and we had Fusus running side by side in the real-time crime center. We probably had that stood up for the first, probably, I would say 2 to 3 years of running both platforms parallel. Fusus just outperformed what Command Aware could do. The other thing is Fusus was a privately owned company. In February of 2024, Axon did acquire them. So now they're part of Axon, who makes body-worn cameras and Cardash tasers that we utilize as well. But they were their own independent company before being purchased by Axon.
But there's a lot of these technologies that kind of get you on the enterprise and then do subscription models. Is there any fear that that would happen as you stand up more and more people on the system?
At this point, we're not really concerned with that. So one of the things is when we locked into our contract, and we currently have a 5-year agreement with the opportunity, if given the authority by city council, we can expand for another 5 years. So at the price point we could potentially stay at that price point for the next 10 years as it relates to the services that we receive from them today.
So you mentioned also that you can note things and that there are some built-in integrations where when you log on, things are recorded as far as, I guess, an employee ID or a name or something. But is it mandatory that you do that when you are accessing the system, say from an administrative standpoint? You said there's the option to make notes, but what is the actual responsibility to do so?
Okay, so the audit page that I showed, that's something that administrator has. So the regular officer who logs in, they don't see the audit page, they don't have the ability. So to them, that's not a transparent wall that they can log in and say, I'm going through my self-audit. That's something that the administrator role does. So they don't have the option to make notes into basically an audit trail or anything like that.
What's the real need to spend the money to do this? Because it sounds like, and it's most assuredly a lack of technological understanding on my part, but I just am curious, like, is this just stopping people from having to log in to multiple systems, or like, what is the cost benefit of that?
I- I'll probably let the sergeant expound on that a little bit more, but one of the things I can tell you, just working with the different platforms we have, um, if in an emergency or they're working a high profile case, I couldn't imagine having to stop and log in and out of 5, 10 different systems to get all the information I needed, especially when I'm going over the radio and trying to either assist that detective or somebody who's on scene who needs information immediately. But the Sarge can probably better expound on what it's like when they're in the real-time crime center, when something's going on, and this ability, how it enhances what they do. Yeah.
Real quick, we have more to cover, so, but I want to hear your question, so. Then. Can you get closer so that he
yeah.
can pick you up?
Yes. My understanding, I want to make sure this is correct, is that Fusus is the way that the Real-Time Crime Center can access privately owned surveillance cameras through the Safe Smart Plea program. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you know how many privately owned cameras are part of that program?
I don't have an exact number. I can tell you there's probably well over 300 businesses who have partnered with the city as part of this initiative.
Okay. And how many video surveillance cameras does the city own?
We have over 3,400 cameras.
And again, my understanding is that Fusus does not provide access to Ring cameras for the people who sign up for their doorbell cameras through Safe Smart Plea. Is that correct?
That is correct.
This, like any camera in any part of the city at any time for any period of time? Or do they need like a reason to access a camera, or are there guardrails for like duration of accessing a live feed?
Sure, and this is something that both the sergeant and the commander can expound upon, but essentially every officer isn't granted a video surveillance account. So they have a process, a Form 1, where they say this detective needs a account created. And based on that, if you're in the first district, you may get access to first district cameras, and that's it. There's not I'm an officer, I get access to every single camera in the city. So typically we work directly with the division to say, if this detective's in the third district, they need access to third district cameras, and this is what we grant them. So they put those guardrails on of what officers being assigned what and what they can look at. It's not a blanket open system, whereas, hey, I give you credentials and now you can see everything.
Then is, you mentioned that you're looking to expand pieces to other departments beyond public safety. Can you say more about that, which other departments?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, the investment in video surveillance cameras, not only benefits law enforcement, but it will benefit, as I mentioned, public works as it relates to snow removal. Sometimes we get complaints about, high grass and things not being cut or vandalism. Those are all things that if it's a public works dispatcher, they can quickly pan the camera and see that, with these vacant lots still haven't been cut, we're getting complaints about that. I need a crew over there. Or they can see that, hey, the crew went out yesterday, the lots are cut. The other thing is, again, Cleveland Water, Cleveland Public Power. Well, power may be an issue if power's out, but Cleveland Water, if there's a water main break, somebody calls in and says, hey, there's a water main break on West 3rd. They can quickly look at the cameras and determine, this is a main valve, the entire intersection's flooded, or no, somebody hit the fire hydrant. And it changes the way they approach that situation. So it's more about giving those operational departments real-time information to allow them to make better decision-making as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Keep that going.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm just gonna plug in here really quickly. I'm gonna move just right over.
See here.
Yes,
Instead.
please.
If you could introduce yourselves and scroll back and forth to the high-tech operation.
Hi, good evening. I am Sergeant Dalia Lopez, officer in charge of the Real-Time Crime Center. Thank you. All right, let's do that again. I am Sergeant Dalia Lopez, officer in charge of the Real-Time Crime Center. Bear with me. I do want everyone to know that I've newly assigned there. I started in December. So I will answer your questions as to the best of my knowledge, honestly. Go ahead, Commander.
Good evening, Commander Ian Muscle, Cleveland Division Police, Bureau of Science and Technology.
All right, just an overview of what the Real-Time Crime Center is exactly. So it started in 2019. That's when it was established. The reason it was put together was pretty much to centralize our resources so that we can use them in both a real-time setting as well as historical investigations. When the unit was established, there were 3 sworn detectives that were assigned to the unit. Today, we have 3 detectives as well as 9 investigative research specialists who are civilian. And we are in the process of hiring 1 more. So like I said before, the major components of the Real-Time Crime Center is to support our field units in real time, both tactically as well as running information searches, analyzing information, connecting dots as quick as possible. And then there is always the post-incident or historical investigations. Sorry, this slideshow did not work. Here we go. All right. On the screen, you're going to see some of the resources that we use and some that Commissioner Jones touched on. Motorola. Motorola is our CAD system, as well as our record system and our radios. So the Real-Time Crime Center uses all of these mostly on a day-to-day basis. We also have Milestone, which is our video management system. ShotSpotter. Now, I know you asked this question earlier, but ShotSpotter actually alerts real-time in Fusus. So say we're sitting there, you'll hear the alarm, and then it will pull up on Fusus. And then what Fusus does, it's actually a pretty cool integration. It will automatically send you to the nearest camera. So it'll pull the incident, then you have cameras. That way, as quick as possible, you can start to look for any, say, suspicious activity. We also have LexisNexis, which is just kind of it's a program that we search information to find subjects, vehicles, and tie that information into whatever investigation we're working on. Axon, obviously our body cameras, video reviews, that's where the evidence gets uploaded, as well as license plate readers now. And on the topic of license plate readers, we have Leonardo, as well as everyone knows Flock Safety. And then last but not least, we have Scope Now, which is a social media search engine. So in the Real-Time Crime Center, kind of what our day looks like, we monitor CAD for live events. So we can see the order of priorities. If a code 1 is initiated, a call for service is called in and created by our dispatch center, we see it first. So what we try to do is, I'm going to give you an example. Say we have a robbery in progress. Before it's even dispatched to a unit, we pull the CAD, which is the incident, and take whatever information we have, try to utilize that information to pull our resources and incorporate them into the response. So sometimes we'll have information for the officers before they're even there, while they're en route. And I will be honest with you, it's actually pretty neat to see when something like that occurs. Because for that example, if there is a robbery in progress, you may have the cameras that picked up the suspect. You may have already identified the subject or the vehicle, and it just makes for a safer way of policing, to be honest with you. That is all I have. I didn't make this long because whatever questions you have, we're here to answer.
So in that case, if you're talking about this, thank you for your presentation. We
Yep.
appreciate it. So Flock Safety is already in use is one question, so.
Yes.
Okay. As in what capacity?
So Flock Safety right now is a license plate reader. That's what we use it for. If we receive information, if someone is looking to identify a license plate on a vehicle, that's what we utilize Flock for, is to search the various cameras to see if we can identify a vehicle
Right, so
by
you could
license plate.
You could track, if that, in the case of that robbery and you had a license plate, you could, without having an officer on, like, trailing that person, you could actually follow them.
It's
potentially?
very hard to do, and I don't like to use the word track. Well, I do, excuse me, let me take that back. It's the manner in which it's used, right? So we will utilize both Flock license plate reader as well as our city cameras to do so. So the Flock cameras are spread out, and sometimes you may search a vehicle and actually never see it on Flock. It's pretty interesting. However, if you have a location and there is a city camera nearby, you'll utilize that platform instead to, yes, track.
So Fusus will, you'll be able to do both, have both those in one, both Flock and the city cameras will be integrated so you can find whatever. Is that what you're saying? Or
So Fusus is layers. It's a layered integration. And all that is it's really easy for the user to see where's what. So you have Fusus up in front of you. It's going to show you an incident. It's going to show you where the nearest Flock camera is, where the nearest city camera is. You may still utilize, though, those platforms to complete your search. but it just kind of ties everything in. It shows you where everything is at.
And does that require somebody either using the Fusus platform or somebody in the real-time crime center to be actively looking for the license plate, or is there a recognition, the computer can follow that? Like your computer system or?
So
No.
I'd like to
Go ahead.
step in real quick, just so we can be clear about the word tracking and following. I think to use the example, like if a vehicle that was, wanted as a, in interest to the police department were to enter the city limits on one side of the city on the east side and then exit the city limits on the west side of the city, it is not possible to follow that vehicle from the entrance to the exit. It's more of a pieces puzzle situation where we're using different technologies available to us to try and find it, or usually what happens more often is a vehicle that's wanted in an aggravated robbery or a felony assault shooting is starting to pop in different areas of, let's say, the 4th district. We start to see, we're starting to see it on the cameras or on Flock in Lee Harvard area. So it sort of just gives us a general location where we can start to bring our assets together to try and find it. But it's not possible to follow from one side to the other. And it's definitely not possible to do it automatically or automated.
So it requires that human
Yes.
eyes.
Yes.
Camera.
And Fusus, just like Commissioner Jones describes, is truly just a window. On my Microsoft Service Pro here, I have multiple tabs up. And without that one window, which is Fusus, the real-time crime center officers or the IRS is assigned there, or Sergeant Lopez would have to tab in between all of those, which obviously causes time. And we could lose evidence or information because of that. So it's just really a way to bring all of that information together.
You can go ahead.
Type of things. Sensitive subject. So I just wanted to know a couple of things just so I can try to understand. So in this real-time crime center, I'm trying to just visualize it. Is it when you're there, is it sort of like quiet until something happens? Or are we in a situation where we're looking at cameras in real time during the day if there are no alerts? So I'm just trying to figure out, because I think there's
Yeah, that's no
people
problem.
are concerned about surveillance. I want.
That's a very good question. Right. So normally we have maybe 2 to 4 people staffed, at least as of late since we've had the new hires. Usually what they do is they'll have radios on, they'll have the CAD system up, monitoring a call for service or an officer calling out for information or for help or stuff like that. In the downtime, if it is quiet, usually we actually have a ton of email requests, and that's mostly what they're working on. And that is help with investigations, anything from a theft to maybe a felonious assault, a wide range of invests.
And one of the unique ways that the city cameras have helped us, and when I was working as a lieutenant in the 4th district, that we were kind of surprised by this, but pleasantly surprised, is they were helping us solve traffic accidents and who was at fault, because we could go back and they could watch, a certain pattern in the traffic activity, or sometimes if people were switching seats as a driver and a passenger, they could say, hey, the passenger was the driver before this accident. So it is some of those minor crimes that really provides a service to the citizens when before we had this ability, before we had real-time crime, kind of assisting us, so that we were just kind of doing a he said, she said type situation in a paper report. But we were actually able to, and in the quieter times, just, maybe go over the air and say, hey, is RTCC watching, or can they go back? Is there a camera in the area? Can they help us with this? So it's not just, the major issues, but we're looking to serve the community in some of the smaller ways too.
This is what I'm trying to I guess, actually, but give the public some sense of reassurance that what's not happening is there's downtime and we're like the issue with the public safety, I mean, public housing, right? That it happens later. Like, I just want to really show the public that there's, because I think when people hear like that you're in a real-time crime center and they, you know, the people watch TV and they watch movies and they think that you guys are just up there, let me see that camera.
We're definitely not. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead,
no.
Amanda.
I understand where you're, I understand your question. I understand where you're coming from. It is not a proactive thing. So you wouldn't, it's like a TV show where someone's sitting there scrolling. It's, they're listening to radio. They're checking emails for maybe a detective question from the aggravated robbery from the night before, and truly just trying to assist it when they can, but not in a proactive, let me try and find a crime type situation. Looking at the CAD, seeing that there's something on the board waiting, and looking to see if there's information that can help arriving officers or arriving detectives when they get there.
Thank you. I just think that's important that people.
Yes, I understand.
Minds go wild. That you
Not the case.
surveillance.
Absolutely.
Call it Brian Ray. I think you have
Hi, everybody. Apologize again for not being in there. So, really helpful presentation. Could you talk us through what's the predicate to use the social media capability, and in other words, what kind of situations, and are there specific reasons, limited reasons as to why you would start to look at social media in connection with the rest of the tools in Fusus? And then what is the record keeping for all of these tools in terms of who accessed when and why?
So I just want to answer.
Could you turn the?
Just want to answer the question about access, and it would only be approved for law enforcement purposes.
Right, but more specific to that, like law enforcement purposes, well, that's anybody in law enforcement. Like, there is, you know, this is what's in play, and I get in real time you're not going to do that, but after the fact, because one of the things that we put in the ALPR policy is that there are thresholds and specific categories of reasons why you would do that, and they have to be they're supposed to be tracked and then reported. And so I'm wondering if that same, and I suspect it's not true, but you know, just curious how you decide, and then how you then track to make sure, okay, yeah, that was an appropriate use.
So really, it all depends on the situation, right? It all depends on the investigation, on what's at hand, will depend on what resources you use. So right now, if I'm assisting a detective with a missing person, say, I'm probably not going to use ShotSpotter unless I needed to, right? Unless that was somehow mentioned. So that is the case for all of these resources. They're not just there to be utilized for everything. It just depends on the situation. Now, when it comes to tracking, there is a log, like Commissioner Jones explained, and that is actually in each and every system. Now that I am the officer in charge of real time, I have the administrative access to these. And what I have done since I've gotten there is I go through and I ensure that our users, everything is up to date. If somebody's leaving a division, they are getting removed. Access isn't there for people, you know, who shouldn't have it. And I hope I answered your question.
So just to follow up, are you recording then after the fact? Okay, ShotSpotter was used by this, you know, so the log is there. X person who had access used it, and we can see, did they, you know, well, obviously they couldn't use it if their access control wasn't turned on, but what was then the rationale? Is that being logged and then audited after the, you know, periodically to ensure, okay, look, hey, somebody turned this on, they didn't put a reason in, let's find out why, or they put this reason in and it doesn't seem to quite track the use policy.
So when we receive a request from a detective or an officer, one of the first ways we use to identify whether it's an law enforcement purpose is we ask for the CAD number associated with the case. So that CAD number will be logged with the search. And would like the Sergeant Lopez says, we have ability to do audits. And any person in the Division of Police found during an audit or an investigation that uses any of our division databases outside of policy are held accountable by the division policies. So we will hold them accountable. It has led to terminations in the past, but we identify right away what the person is, what they're requesting, why they're requesting it, and the first indicator of that request is the CAD number associated with the call or the email.
Okay. And are those results of those audits publicly available?
Which results?
Like, in other words, are you auditing on a routine basis? Okay, here are the tools that we're using in Fusus. We've checked, yes, everything checked out, or no, these anomalies, and we ran down the anomalies, and either they were actually in line because the record keeping was wrong, or they were out of line, and then there was a consequence.
So you'd have to be more specific about which audits you're, what are we auditing routinely? But like we discussed earlier in the meeting, our ALPR policy was signed in October of 25, and that does require an annual report. Obviously, we haven't got to that point yet, but it just depends on what the request is. If there's an allegation, we will immediately log or audit. I was auditing today, as a matter of fact. So it just depends on the situation specifics.
Okay, so for right now, as a matter of policy with these other systems, there's not it's a kind of, if there's an inquiry or if there's a reason to check, there's not like every quarter we're doing an audit to look at each log and look at the CAD and make sure, okay, in line with policy.
It's a very generalized question, and you're asking for a specific answer. It depends on the technology, and it depends on the policy related to that technology. So, for example, our WCS cameras are audited per policy on a quarterly basis. So it just depends on the technology, and I don't have.
Okay, that's what. Yeah. So but you've got some in place. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, we
that's
do.
What I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
And then with social media, can you give us a sense of like when does that get turned on? What are the reasons for that?
Again, it would be dependent on the type of crime, the type of request, and it would always be preceded by the identification of the requester and the CAD number associated. I don't have a specific social media example to give you.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just curious. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. The first, I was gonna ask a bit about the social media and Brian may ask a number of questions, but I guess one question is for the scope now, is it only looking at public social media profiles is one question. And then my second question is, there have been some concerns raised about Flock cameras and vulnerabilities for people being able to tap into them. And so I was just curious, just kind of any concerns that the division has about that.
All right, as it relates to scope now, that is one that I'm not very well versed in. So I will definitely get back to you with that answer.
I am generally aware of some recent media response when it comes to Flock, and I don't know if the word tap in is the correct understanding of. I believe that some information was publicized after a public records request. We've had some conversations with Flock after that, and they've indicated that they put in place some barriers to that since then. But again, Flock is just one of the tools that we use amongst the many that Sergeant Lopez described. It's not something that we use, more heavy than any of the others.
Follow-up question on ALPR. So on your website, as this was coming up, I had thought that, our 2025 policy was operationalized, and you're saying it was operationalized in October.
I have a date of October 23rd, 2025.
2025, because there's, online on the city's website, it's a 2023 policy.
Oh, all right.
I don't know how that interacts with what the officers see, but I'm glad to hear that.
So our officers are directed to use the city's SharePoint site, and that is the best way to get the most update information. We would not go to the city website for
No,
that.
of course, yeah. So we don't have access to that SharePoint site, so we have to.
And
we rely
Sergeant
on
Pollack,
your notice.
we'll take care of that one on the city website. We'll take care of that. We'll update that.
We rely on your notice that it's been operationalized essentially, so, and we probably got that, but it's been a while, so. So just to be clear also, in terms of, you talked about no facial recognition, there's no other sort of gate or that kind of individual recognition that's being used right now.
No,
And is that written down, like that you're not gonna do that, or it's just like you don't have the capacity, so you do it, or you decided not to do it? How is that?
I wasn't part of the conversations when it came to that decision. I just know that we don't do it.
Okay.
Since the implementation of the real-time crime center, have you seen a change in like the solve rate of crimes or like, I guess like what positive changes have you seen and how it impacts, like how crime is being addressed?
Honestly, I don't have the numbers with me, but I can tell you firsthand that it absolutely has. And even in the short time that I've been there, I have seen cases that are solved that would not have been otherwise, to be honest with you.
And just something did come to mind when it comes to the social media searches. We might use something like that specific to school threats. So sometimes we'll get a report that there's been a threat on social media for school, and that would be one of the ways that social media be used. That's probably more often than not, it's when it's used.
And also, oh, go ahead.
I just said thank you.
Okay. One question, and you may have already touched on this, but I'm wondering, in terms of, I know you have for Fusus in general, and I mean, this is a Fusus question, I guess, but are there, I mean, you have group denials, like Commissioner Jones gave the example of the fire dispatchers who don't get access to certain things. Do you deny, like, if an officer incorrectly, uses the technology in a way that they're not supposed to, are there individual denials? Like, okay, you
Yes.
messed up, and so you no longer have access.
So if somebody is accused of using a database incorrectly or outside of a law enforcement purpose, that they would be denied that access until the investigation is over.
And could that become a permanent denial or?
Yes.
Questions from? Okay, go ahead. Then. Oh, quick question.
I just wanted to follow up with this question. I think 3,400 cameras seems like a lot for me. That just seems like 3,400 plus 300 businesses. And I know that the response to the question was that, well, different people will have different permissions. But I do think that maybe the public should know, like, is there some way, at least for us as an oversight body, to know who has what access? I mean, and someone has to have access to everything, right? Who are those people? Like, I just think that the more transparency we can provide to the public, the better. And so I get they're gonna be, like, we need to know, like, so would a commander only have access to cameras in their district, right? I don't know, I just feel like we need more information. Because like I previously stated, I think that this is a concern for the public. And I think the more information we can provide to kind of reassure the public, because you know how these things work, like, even if you're not doing certain things, like, people's imaginations can run wild and people can still believe that things are happening or not happening. So I just think that the more information we can provide to the public.
Sure, and that's why we're here tonight to
Yeah.
try to answer those questions. But we did answer that question earlier, but to be specific, it would be district specific. So you would get permissions to your district. So, there might be somebody but I don't actually, there wouldn't be somebody that has permission for everything. It'd be individuals who have permission for certain things, but, we work with Commissioner Jones and OIT to identify what the individual's requests are and what their needs are. And their supervisor ensures that that is something that's followed.
And my other question was about, I'm just looking in the corrective action policy, and it seems like this is newer, right? And so I'm wondering, all I can see is the group 2 violation for computers. This unauthorized or improper use access lead violations. Where is that gonna be in the corrective action policy? Like, I mean, I know that this committee, we all work together, very closely with, Commissioner Van Leer on these policies, but as I keep looking through the corrective action policy, I feel like there's something missing when it comes to this new type of technology. Because I feel like it would be a serious violation if there were someone in the division who was improperly using this technology. So
It is a very serious
I
violation.
just wonder if I'm missing something, or is this maybe a space where we need to work together to figure out where do we put this in the corrective action policy? Because besides the computers and group 2 violations, I don't really see anything else that would be applicable to this.
Are you looking at it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to give me 1 second to look at something. So it depends on what type of database. It depends on what kind of database a person accesses. But specifically, if they access the leads system, that could be a permanent denial of leads. So at that point, if you're permanently denied from leads, that may call into question your whether or not you can remain a police officer. And termination is actually a preferred process for that. So it just depends on what the database is, and it depends on what, the investigation result is. So it could lead to a significant suspension to a permanent revocation of ability and termination. And it has led to termination in the past.
Thank you for handling that. I know it's fast.
You got it.
Hi, Commander, you spoke a few minutes ago about, I believe what you were talking about were Fox access records, internal access records that were released through a public records request. And are you referring to the report that Public Safety prepared for City Council, and City Council's request for the month of January?
No, I'm referring to a news article I read.
Was it in Signal Cleveland?
No,
Okay, so we're not talking about the same thing. Can you,
I don't have the article memorized, so.
no, a timeframe? I can look for it. I don't know if we're talking about a month, a year ago.
Within the last few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sergeant, a while back, you mentioned Leonardo, which I think you were saying was another brand of license plate reader. Did I understand that
Yes,
correctly?
that is correct.
Okay, and so this is an LPR that the division is using now?
It is.
Okay, do you know how?
It's only used in real time that I know of, and it is one that I don't personally use. It's not one, I would say, one of the more commonly used. Yeah, it's usually more flock
Okay, are these
uses.
LPRs that the division had prior to acquiring them from Flock?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
So yes, so that system was from a previous license plate reader implementation.
Oh, yeah.
So that system was from a previous license plate reader implementation. So I want to say probably back in 2010 through 2012. There was an initiative with the 5 counties, so Cuyahoga, Lorraine, Geauga, Lake, we were all part of a Homeland Security region. We received a grant, so there were 39 license plate readers that were purchased. Cleveland received, I think, 2 fixed locations, and then there were some that were actually mobile that were put on vehicles. Most of the ones that are on vehicles have since been decommissioned. That is an older technology, but there are still a couple fixed cameras out there from this older technology that we still operate as the county owns that system and keeps it going.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I respect that you've answered us several times now, on the social media, but it does give me great concern to not have more specific answers about how that is used, especially with the heads of the departments that are using it in front of us. So just to note that, because I had very specific questions about for what and when is it used, and we know we're not gonna get those answers, but, I think one of the other questions I have is why do we need both? Why do we need Flock and 3,200 or, 300 plus private cameras? Why do we need both when we have seen and heard recently that not only were there issues potentially with people being able to hack into the system, but also with the fact that they were sharing the data that they were collecting with other agencies, sometimes without the agencies that was collecting the data even knowing that that data was being shared. So we have I have concerns with the way our federal government is utilizing ICE for law enforcement. And that data, according to this report, was being shared with them without even the agencies that were collecting it knowing. And so knowing that those are potential issues, do we need both?
They function very differently if you're talking the city cameras versus ALPRs. They have completely different function. As it relates to information sharing when it comes to Flock, and I just want to clarify, are you saying that it was information that was somehow obtained federally that the agency didn't know? Because on a day-to-day, we actually can see who we share with, what agencies we share
Yeah, we
with.
do not participate in anything immigration search wise.
No.
And I want to like to touch base on social media, and I understand that you have serious concerns about it, but I did answer the question. It is all public facing social media searches, and it's most specifically for school threats. I don't use it on a daily basis, and I can't tell you the last time it was used, but I can tell you that's what we use it for.
And it is not used that often. I will clarify that.
And this is my last question, but it kind of ties in with the other ones I was asking is, when we see these large scale protests or we see, lawful protesting, and then we know that we're being surveilled when that protesting has happened, and then you can go back potentially and, target people that were parts of those protests and look at their social media. Is that a capability that even if you're not doing it, that is available to you to do?
So we don't surveil protests specifically for identification of protesters. We support here at the Cleveland Division of Police, the First Amendment rights of all is community members to protest. And we actually work hand in hand with our traffic unit or OICs of those protests to at least make it as comfortable as possible for the people that are protesting. So no, that is not to my knowledge ever been used for identifying a protester at all. And we support the protesters' right to protest in the city of Cleveland.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I think, as far as the ICE sharing data the data sharing with ICE goes, does Cleveland participate in Flock's national lookup system?
We do, yes.
Okay, so I think the concern is that anyone who participates in that national lookup system, their data can be searched by anyone else who participates in that national lookup system. So the incidences that have happened is that other cops in other jurisdictions could search Cleveland's data on behalf of ICE, even if a Cleveland cop isn't doing that. So I think that is the concern.
So ICE does not have access to that.
Not directly, but there have been many recently reported incidences of side door access where individual officers search on behalf of ICE through the national lookup system. I can send you that information.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying that as a rule or as a policy of the Cleveland Division of Police, we do not support that, and we do not support immigration investigations in that way.
I know, I'm just saying that like the national book tool is inherently vulnerable to that.
Will you send us that information?
Yes.
And if we, just want to add, if we find that out, we would block that person. If anyone was using any of our data in a surreptitious way, we would block them immediately.
And following up on license plate readers, what is the city's retention policy for ALPR data?
30 days.
30 days. What happens if the protected data is shared beyond the original system of record? So if an ALPR search is conducted in Fusus, is that information also stored in Fusus? And how are you ensuring that the retention policy is adhered to across technology platforms?
When it is searched, it is used on that program's platform, not on Fusus, right?
And I know that the city of Cleveland recently signed a contract with Celebrate for digital forensics. Is that also integrated into the Real-Time Crime Center?
Not as of yet.
And then finally, just on the topic of facial recognition, I think the reason this keeps coming up is because of the Quayon Tolbert case, where my understanding is that the Cleveland Police Department sent a request to the Northeast Ohio Fusion Center. They conducted the Clearview AI facial recognition scan and sent that information back to the police department. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of those specifics.
Okay, I can send that to you as well. I think that's the concern, is that the Northeast Ohio Fusion Center is not the Cleveland Police Department, so the Cleveland Police Department is not using facial recognition, but has access to those capabilities through the regional fusion center. So that's why that could keep coming up.
Okay, follow up to Celebrate. That's the first I've heard of it. So you're saying it has not yet been integrated, but it sounds like that would be.
I don't know if it ever will. This is a separate unit. I don't know
So
much about.
Celebrate would be more used for our digital forensics unit, which is a unit that we're looking to stand up in the near future. Not as a integration into the real-time crime center.
So it's helpful to hear that what's happening. Great, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just curious, the name of the software for the social media monitoring is Scope, or is that short for something else?
It's Scope now. And it's not monitoring, it's a search if you are looking to identify someone utilizing a social media search.
Scope with a K.
Gotcha. And do you know the owner of that company or software?
I do not.
Great if we could get your slides too, so we can post them online. I mean, they're on the Teams, and I apologize, you haven't been able to see the slides, but there are slides with those names and such. So we'll post that online too. If we can get both the slide decks from y'all, we'll get those.
Okay.
Any other questions? Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time. I know
Of
we're
course.
long. And
You're welcome.
I appreciate the previous questions as well. And so,
Thank you.
This is not a formal meeting, so I can put all the formal.
Mm.